What happens when you take arguably one of the world's biggest motoring brands, Volkswagen, and pair it up with what's probably the most popular shape on the roads today, the SUV? Well, you'd like to think something magical happens. So let's take a look at the Volkswagen ID.4 and see if there really is magic in the air. So what we should have here is an absolute match made in heaven. It's really nice that we've got these different colours here behind us. All of these are first editions. You can have those at the moment in this country for a snip under £38,000, which I think represents pretty good value for money considering what you get inside and outside of this car. The reason I like having all three of them here is you can really see the difference between the colours and how a colour can really affect how a car looks and feels. What I'd like to do is I'd like to treat looking around the outside of these cars like my kids do with their dinner. I want to start with the thing that I like the least, so we'll start with the Brussels sprout and we'll work our way up to the beef or maybe your plant-based whole food alternative when we get to the front. So come around the back and have a look. Now I'm going to use this blue one because this is the one we're going to be driving most today, and I think in this blue metallic-y colour I think this is the best looking of the three of them. Obviously you'll be the judge of that. I'm sure we've all got our personal favourites. Now, initially I said that this was the Brussels sprout in the car, the back, the bit that I like the least. But it's really deceptive because when you first look at it, they've done this really clever trick where the things that draw your eyes are the things that look the best. So we've got this lovely light bar across the back. I love how they do this on these Volkswagens. And their new black and white badge to denote it's an electric vehicle with the white here, the ID.4. I think that top section of it does look really, really nice. It's like they've decided, well, anything below that eye line, it doesn't really matter. So do you know what? Let's stick some dirty old grey plastic, not even black. We'll try and break it up a little bit, but do you know what? We don't really care about this down here. That doesn't matter. This is the bit that everybody looks at, and I think this completely ruins the back end of it. It's got a lovely squat look. I'll show you the boot later. It's a massive boot, even though it looks squat here. But it's a shame that these sort of cutouts and these bits here almost feel like an afterthought to me, and that's the reason why I don't like the back of it. It's more forgiving on this colour. I'll show you on the other two colours, especially the black and white one. It really, I think it looks quite cheap in comparison to the price tag that you pay for this car. Let's move up the plate. Let's get to the broccoli and the carrot, shall we, on the side. I think you have to say on first glance, it's pretty uneventful. And that's what creates some interesting talking points on the side here. But first of all, let's just look at these wheels. I think they're stunning. Volkswagen are very good at doing nice big alloy wheels, aren't they? They're very striking. And I think that detracts the eye from what is otherwise a pretty nothing side. This first edition has got this nice silver strip and the black roof, which I think breaks it up nicely. Not all models are going to have that, so it will be even more plain in its outlook. And again, this plasticky bottom bit that's going to get scratched. I don't think that's particularly nice there. It's almost Renault Kadjar, dare I say it. I think if it was a little bit more squat, it's kind of got that feel to it. Other interesting points on here, these door handles, they're not actually handles. To open the door, there's a little micro switch push button underneath to open it. So they stay nice and flat. However, if that doesn't work or if there's an issue, if you give that a good tug, it works like a normal door handle, so it will come up. And in here, behind here, there is a key. So if you get locked out, there is a way of getting into it. Not a lot else to say about it, other than the talking points for me is around what this car represents. This car doesn't represent something great, new, fantastic, something futuristic, something that we all want to talk about and be around. This represents a car that should sell extremely well. And what do people want? What do normal everyday people want that are going to use this car for what it's designed for? Going to the shops, traveling around the country, doing the school run. What they want is something that looks nice, that their neighbours approve of, but not something that's going to be garish or outlandish or distinguish them as something different from everybody else in the street. And I think what Volkswagen have done here is they've created that perfect blend of an electric vehicle that looks like an everyday car, which has got just a bit of a twinkle of something special about it without shouting. And I think this whole side represents that perfectly. Let's move to my favourite bit of the front. I think the balance that they've created here is just right. They've taken this lovely paintwork and they've put it all the way down the front of the car. And the first time we see any of that horrible plasticky stuff is right here at the bottom, this silver strip here, which is quite nice because it breaks up the front nicely. These lights across the front, which go all the way across, I think are really, really striking. And this black VW badge again, I think that's a lovely touch. And I think they've got that just right. The only disappointment I've got at the front is if you lift this bonnet, there's no storage under there. Considering all the motors and everything are at the back, there's nothing under there that you can use. It's just fluids and other bits and pieces. I'm not going to open it and bore you with it. It's a waste of time. I wish they'd done something a little bit more, especially with a vehicle that sits this high. You would have thought they would have the room to do that with. But it's nice to finish on a high here. Here's your roast beef or your plant-based whole food alternative that will make you very, very happy at the end of your meal. Now, I think that balance that they tried to strike outside of the traditional, the know where you are feeling with the slightly more modern, they've continued that inside, and I think they've been pretty successful in it. Now, you look around the cabin, I think it's very, very comfortable. It screams Volkswagen. It's got that quality feel to it. And I feel like there's nothing in here that doesn't feel like it's really well made and put together. There are a few materials in here that you do wonder, well, does it really belong in a Volkswagen? Certainly when you get a little bit lower down, it feels a bit cheap. But across your eye line, when you get in, everything in here looks really, really nice. And quite simple. Now, when I'm sitting in this driving position, this steering wheel, it's very adjustable, up, down, forward, backwards, so I can get my seating position and my driving position just right quite easily. The steering wheel itself is quite traditional. The buttons look normal on the steering wheel until you start playing with them, and then you realise they're haptic. They've got that feedback. There's no actual push button at all. It's a bit like when you touch the phone on your modern screen on a mobile phone. You get that little buzz feedback to it. The other thing that strikes me, this little screen here seems to have everything I need on it. Very, very simple. It's not overly cluttered. It gives me the details I need. The big screen, the 10-inch screen in the middle, that gives me more information about everything to do with the car. More about that in a minute. The other thing is we've got a BMW i3, I say gear selection, drive selection. I twist this here to tell it to go forward, back, neutral, and also to select whether I want more regen braking. So this kind of little area here feels like it's been done before and it worked. The i3, it seemed to work. Across here, it's a little bit different. We haven't got any physical dials, buttons, knobs, anything to touch. Everything is haptic still, whether you're touching the screen as a touch screen or touching these little buttons and volume controls. There's a slider there to turn the volume up and down. Same with my heat. There's a few little touch buttons on the front, and then everything else on the screen that I need. It's quite a nice system. It's not too bad at all. It's very, very easy to find your way around. Very easy to do what you want to do on it. My reservations would be when you're driving, how easy is it to do the simple things like control the climate in here? Well, they've thought of that, because if I touch the climate button, they've simplified the climate control. They've got these handy little buttons on the screen now. So defog my windows, warm my feet, warm my hands, cool my feet. So without having to play about too much, if I suddenly decide, actually, I've got cold feet, I'm driving, I can just hit a button and it'll warm my feet nicely. So that's quite a nice little addition to what you'd see on most other cars. Otherwise, around here, very comfortable. I've got to mention the windows. They are electric windows, front and back, but I've only got 2 buttons. That's because if I want to put the rear windows down, I have to touch the rear button before pushing the button here, and then deselect it if I want to do the front one again. It's okay, it works, it's something different. Is it good or bad? I'll let you be the judge of that. Across here, loads of room and loads of space. I love these cubby holes here. Plenty of room there for my drinks bottle or coffee cup, but I can take this out, and I've just got a nice big cubby hole with a kind of a rubbery mat in it to chuck stuff in. So whatever suits you really. And likewise here, I've got this cover here, loads of room here with these removable bits that I can adjust or take out completely. A nice big slot here that my mobile phone can go into with 2 USB-C chargers. So practicality wise, space wise here for the driver, it's really, really good. These pillows aren't too bad. Consider modern day cars have to be quite big. They're pretty good. Glove box wise, it's tiny. You won't get much in there. So a nice, comfortable feeling front of this vehicle. Let's see if that continues in the back. And we'll start off with the all-important thing. How much leg room have we got? I'm 5'9". That is my driving position, and my goodness, there's more leg room than I know what to do with here. There is plenty here, and that's really made that much better by how this seat is. Now, in a lot of electric cars, all the batteries and everything are under the floor, which means the floor is that much higher, which means the seat at the back sits a little bit lower. So you end up with your knees higher than they should be. You want that support behind your knees. Now, in here, a lot of the batteries and bits and pieces are under this seat, which means this seat sits a little higher. Couple that with the fact we have no transmission tunnel down the middle. I've got a nice flat floor. This is much more comfortable than most electric cars. In fact, than a lot of cars per se that I've ever sat in the back have been. So I think they've really thought about the design of the back of this car, and I think they've got it spot on. You'll be very happy back here for a long period of time. Head height wise, loads of room here. I think even if you were 6 foot, you would feel quite comfortable in here. The head restraints, obviously they're adjustable. They can give you a nice comfortable fit. I've got armrest here with a couple of cup holders in should I need them, and also we'll see in the back in a bit we've got a ski hatch, so we can get things all the way through to the back. Other nice things in the back here, well, at first glance this seems like just a plain back of a seat with some stitching, but actually got a couple of handy pockets, and here's a nice one. You can pop your mobile phone in there, so if you're sat here on a long journey you can just pop it in there and you can see the screen. Another little pocket here. Down here I've got 2 USB-C chargers, some air controls. Not that I can control them, but I can sort of move the vents up, down, left and right, and it's the same in this seat here. So all in all, add to that the ISOFIX points that you've got here. This is definitely a very usable 5-seater car. I said I'd come back to the boot because I'm really impressed with it. It's 543 litres, and it's more than enough for a family, this boot. It's 23 litres bigger than a Tiguan. Bit under here, a little cubby hole where you could put your charging cables and bits and pieces. It's got the towing eye and things under there at the moment, but plenty of room. We've got a charging socket up there, or a electric outlet socket. All right, it's a boot. I haven't got much to say about it, but I am impressed with the size of it. Considering this looks like quite a squat back end, there is sufficient room in there, especially if you put the seats down as well, 60/40 folding rear ones. It's enormous. The one thing you will notice when you put the seats down is there is a lip at the hinge on the back of the seats. You can buy a false floor that will go in here. I'm sure some models probably come with it, but this first edition doesn't. So you could make it flat if you so wished. But yeah, a lovely boot that. I can tell you right from the start that these seats are incredibly comfortable. They're really, really nice to sit in. I forgot to mention before, in this first edition, you get this armrest. You don't get one this side, I suppose. You kind of put your arm on the windowsill. But if you were cruising on a motorway and you just wanted to be comfortable, that's quite nice. Your view out the front is stunning. The little screen in front of you moves up and down with the steering wheel, so it's never in your way. And this screen in the middle, it sits below the line of the dashboard, so everything I can see in front is really, really nice. Not so good out the back, but there's enough. I can see everything I need to see. I wouldn't be able to see anything really, really low down, but most modern cars are like that anyway. It's just a bit of a letterbox at the back there. Now, this first edition has got a 77 kilowatt hour battery that drives a 150 kilowatt motor. It's driving the rear wheels, it's all in the back as we've said before, and that'll do you 0 to 62 in about 8.5 seconds according to Volkswagen. But I have seen other time runs and people doing it in under 8 seconds. So reckon around the 8-second mark and you won't go far wrong for this type of car. I think that's very, very respectable. Range wise, well, WLTP will tell you you'll do well over 300 miles. Ignore that. I think you won't go far wrong if you're reckoning on about 260 miles. In order to increase your range, you're going to want to adapt your driving style. It's not just about what you do with your right foot. But on here, we've got a little button that says mode. Gives me eco, comfort, sport, and individual. Obviously I can set up my own little driving mode on individual, but I'm driving it on comfort at the moment, and it's plenty responsive enough. It's giving me a nice comfortable drive. I think I would probably leave it in this most of the time. If I change that to sport, I get a nice red gauge on there, or a nice red button on there to show that, look out, you're in sport mode. Anything could happen now. And unfortunately, this twisty lane, I've got cars coming towards me. So let me just get past this and we'll see what this sport is like. So we're almost at a standing start now. Do you know, it's not going to pull your fillings out, but that's perfectly respectable. I quite like that. Pushing on a bit, there is a bit of road noise, a bit of wind noise, but it sounds refined. It sounds all right. That's not going to bother me. And I am on quite bumpy roads, so bear that in mind with these big tyres. It's again perfectly acceptable. There's nothing wrong with the noise from either the wind or the road. And those tyres, and bear in mind the weight of this car. This is over 2 tons, this car. Most electric cars are heavy. It's a 50-50 weight distribution, so everything's down low, so you don't really notice it. What it actually does is it makes the car a lot more poised than a lot of combustion engine cars that you'll drive. And driving around these country lanes, there's potholes, there's lumps and bumps. I'm using the steering quite a lot. It's very direct, the steering. It's light without being feather light, and it gives a very, very nice drive and a nice feel along the road. I don't think you're going to start feeling sick in the back from wallowing around. It's firm without being harsh. It's overall, this car is made for families, and that's the ride that you want in this car. You just want it to be comfortable. You want to know that if you get it a little bit wrong sometimes, it's going to pull back into line. You know that if you're going to go for an overtake, there's enough power there from 50 to 70 mile an hour to get you safely through that overtake. You just want to know that it's going to do everything pretty well. You're not buying a sports car, you're not buying a pickup truck, you're buying a comfortable family car. And as far as those box tickings go, I think this is ticking everything so far. On the other thing to do with the driving and sport and different modes and things, I've also got B mode on here. Now this car will not come to a complete stop on its regenerative braking, but I can firm up that regenerative braking by selecting B on my BMW i3 type stalk here. And you do feel a noticeable slowing down when you take your foot off the pedal. It will almost bring it to a stop, but it just keeps creeping forward. Other electric cars will come to a complete stop, but there's a nice feel to it, and it doesn't feel like some electric cars where when you start using the brakes and regen, they can be a little bit notchy. This feels quite smooth. Now, the overall feeling in here is one of space. There's no doubt there's a lot of room in this car, and I wanted to give you some figures comparing it to the VW Tiguan, which I think, as I said before, is its direct replacement, or it's the car that you would probably compare this to if you wanted to look at a petrol equivalent. So this car, overall length, is just short of 10 centimetres longer. Width-wise, it's about 1.5 centimetres wider, but it's actually best part of 3 centimetres shorter. So it's sort of a bit bigger outside, a bit more squat. But inside, there is definitely more room in here than there ever was in a Tiguan. So if you've been in one, that'll give you an idea of just how this car feels and how roomy it is. The other thing that we always ask about with electric cars is the charging. Of course, this is CCS. At home, depending what setup you've got, this will charge at 7 or 11 kilowatts. Out and about, if you can get on a rapid charger, it will charge at 125 kilowatts. Now that will do 0 to 80 in less than 40 minutes, about 37, 38 minutes, I believe. And I think for the size battery at the moment, that's quite respectable. Do you know, I'm really struggling with this test drive. On the one hand, this is a very, very capable car and it's really impressing me. On the other, I'm struggling to find things to talk about with it, because everything it does, it just does really, really well. There's nothing exciting, there's nothing unusual. I'm guessing this is what you expect from a Volkswagen. This is what you expect from a mass-produced car that you could pretty much buy without ever test driving. You want to know that you're going to get a car that's just going to work. And this just works. This just feels right. I didn't come here today expecting to be blown away by this car. Well, this hasn't got a direct equivalent. but it's got one that's very, very similar in the Tiguan. And I think this is light years ahead of that. But I'm not getting excited about it. The thing is, I'm not upset about that. The thing is, I think this is a fantastic car. I would happily take this home to my family and tell them I've bought this without any input from them at all, knowing that they would be very, very happy in this car. And I think that speaks volumes about all the other things I could talk about, all the gizmos, gadgets, the things that other electric cars wow us with. This doesn't wow us. This is the girlfriend you want to take home to your mum. That's what this is. This isn't the exciting girl that you meet when you're 17 and you can't believe your luck because she's 5 years older than you and showing you a great time. Oh no, you don't take her home to your mum. You take this girl home to your mum. This is the girl you're going to marry. This is the one that you are happy with. This is the one you want to spend your life with. This is how good this car is. I am so impressed with it without being blown away. And that is very, very hard for me to quantify and to tell you about. It is really impressive. So there you go, the VW ID.4, like the perfect wife. Beautiful, dependable, the perfect companion, and also knows just what to do at just the right moment to get your heart racing. I really wasn't expecting to like this car as much as I did today. This definitely gone to the top of my list of cars that, you know, if I had the money to buy one, I'd probably go out and put my name down on the order books for one today. It really has impressed me that much. So all that remains for me to do is to say thank you very much to Just EVs again for letting me use their cars today. Without them, I wouldn't be able to do any of these videos. And they're very, very kind. Have a look on their website. All the details will be below in the description. Thank you ever so much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed it, and I'll see you again soon. Take care. Oh, just before I go, if you need a reason not to buy a white car, as I said, I don't particularly like the white car or this car in white. Come have a look at this. I don't know if you can see that very well. It's absolutely covered in flies. It's like they're attracted to it. I hope you can see that. When you compare that to the other two, no flies on them.